You want to know what's going on with me, Jacob? Do you really want to know? Huh?
Not really.
No? Okay. Well, shit. I'm going to tell you anyway. I watched Dune Part 2. And I thought it was okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's good. It's good.
I didn't love it. I got to tell you, I didn't love it. No.
You probably were confused, I'm guessing.
I was not confused. I knew exactly what was going on. I was just like, this movie... It's so beige. It's such a beige film, right?
You mean the color palette?
Yeah. And I understand
That's what bothered you, is the colors?
The colors bothered me a bit, yes, but other things bothered me. Most of which...
The beige.
Beige.
Is what you said, though.
So beige. So fucking beige. And...
I'm bothered that is your take on the movie, is that it's beige.
I just didn't think he was very inspired. Like, when he was trying to get everybody riled up with that speech, 2/3 of the way through, I was just not... I was like, this guy, he's like a big whiny baby. It's like a big...
Oh, you're so wrong. That was not a whiny speech.
He's so whiny. He's Space Hamlet. And that was my big criticism of Hamlet, also, is that, like, I don't like the guy at all. I think he's just kind of like a big baby. You know?
All right, now you've betrayed yourself. Your entire review has just fallen out because now you're trying to criticize Hamlet in the same vein as Dune, and now people are like, okay, this guy, this Charlie dude who's about to pitch me a TV show that isn't going to be anywhere near as good as Hamlet.
I'm not saying Hamlet is bad. I like Hamlet, but I'm just like...
No, you think Hamlet's shit. All right, well, hello everyone, and welcome to the VeryReasonablePilots podcast. I am your co-host, Jake.
And with him, as always, is...
With me, as always... Oh, whoa, now he's jumping on my intro here.
I am.
With me, as always, is my host, Charles, who thinks he's better than Shakespeare. Charlie, what's your pitch today that's, for some reason, better than Hamlet?
I am better than Billy Shakes. You want to know why? I have all my hair, and I'm not dead. All right, so... This week's pitch is titled Regretful Heroics. I'm open to different titles, but I think Regretful Heroics is fun. And it works. And it's gonna kind of be like a road trip crime thriller show. So kind of take the vibe...
Similar to Drop Off Dangerously, maybe?
More similar to Logan, I would say.
Logan.
More similar...
The Fox Marvel movie.
Yeah, it's gonna be just like Morbius or Madam Web, my two favorite movies. Both better than Hamlet, I might add.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's gonna kind of give like John Wick, Last of Us, Logan sort of vibes, right? Because there's this whole like secret underground criminal society that exists within the regular society, right? And that is kind of the world that our two main characters are delving in and like getting involved in, right? And so our first main character, he is an adult man in his mid-30s, Mark Becker, a smuggler, drug dealer, thief, and a lifelong criminal, is forced to save a young girl and must balance keeping her safe, getting her home, and saving his own skin, all while navigating the strange criminal underworld that he has found himself stuck in the middle of, right? So Mark Becker, one of the worst people, right? He's just like this big prick. He's been a criminal since he was a little kid, and he's probably got like a 10th grade reading level. I'm imagining like the first scene we see of him is he's in police lockup or whatever. And they're like, yep, Mark Becker graduated, you know, he didn't graduate high school. He has a 10th grade reading level, and every single drug we have on system is in his blood right now. Like, this guy is the lowest of the low, the bottomest. Define the barrel, right? You see you look inside the barrel, you see the bottom of it. Kick out the bottom of the barrel and then put it on the ground. That's where Mark is. He's below the bottom of the barrel, right? Real piece of shit. And then we have Amy Hart, a 12-year-old girl who has been kidnapped from her parents 1 month ago. She is happy-go-lucky and fun-loving, but understands the cruelty of the world and is not stupid. So this young lady, you know, she's fun, she's happy, she's smiley, but she does have a little bit of an edge to her. And she has been kidnapped by these criminals and has been held for the past month. And we don't know why at the beginning, right? So the story basically starts with Mark is, he gets out of lockup somehow, you know, he pays his bail or someone pays his bail or there's a jailbreak or something, right? And this is, I should say, this is set in kind of contemporary America, right?
Okay.
Mark gets out of jail, and he goes to basically this, like, you know, bookie guy who helps you get new identities. And he's talking with him, and he's like, I need a new identity. He hands him, like, $2,000, right? And he's like, I need a new identity, get me out of Dodge, and we're good. We're even. Here's $2,000. Your debts are paid to me. We're good, right? And then in the background, behind the bookie, he sees this little girl just sitting chained up to a chair, right? And he asks the bookie about it, and the bookie says, don't mind your business. You don't want to know, right? If you know what's going on with her, it's a whole different thing, right? And this is going to be kind of a turning point in Mark's journey throughout the show. And this is all pilot episode. And this is kind of the scene that inspired me to write this show. And it's Mark Becker deciding to do the first good thing he's ever done in his entire life, right? It's him deciding that even though he's a criminal and even though he's a bad person and he's done horrible things, he cannot live with himself knowing that that little girl sitting over there in the corner is going to be bought or sold or killed or eaten or whatever, you know, or ransomed or whatever. He cannot, his moral compass, what little of it there is, will not allow him to do that. And so we just have Mark, you know, looking back at her. She makes eye contact with him. You know, he looks over at his bookie at the new identity and the stack of cash sitting in front of him. And he just, oh, fuck. And then he knocks the bookie out, takes the keys out of his pocket, goes, unlocks the girl, and, like, grabs her hand, grabs the keys, like the car keys out of the bookie's pocket, handgun, and a handful of, like, a wad of cash. And they get in the car and they just drive, right? And that's going to be kind of, that's our inciting incident for this whole show.
On your note of your of Beck's, you know, for some reason taking this girl.
Yeah.
I don't know, but immediately when you were saying it, I was thinking, like, maybe when he was younger, maybe at a point in his life where he wasn't, like, I don't know, really young, like 12, where he couldn't have knocked the bookie out.
Yeah. Like,
there was a moment where he saw a girl of a similar age in a similar position, and he just, without thinking, just got his money or whatever and left. Didn't help her at all. And it's just something that's been, like, in the back of his mind. It doesn't even have to be in the show. Maybe it's just like, this is going to be something that, I mean, maybe we mention at some point, or it's just a back, or just something that's, you know, you tell the actor when he's doing the scene.
When he's doing the scene.
Know, this is, like, just like, so he has, like, it in their head. Like, this is something in his past that's happened.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, that could definitely be something we go back to towards the middle of the show. And we could have in this shot, there kind of be like a similar sepia tone matte shot of a little girl in, like, she's not wearing this, it would be corny if she was wearing, like, the same hat or whatever, but something similar. And he looks at her and they make eye contact, you know, and the whole scene could be like, maybe he's 16, right? So feasibly he could have done that. He could have helped her, but he decided not to. And that could be kind of like his turn to being, like, less of just, like, this, you know, lowly criminal and more of just, like, an actual bad person, right? Because we're going to get into one of Becker's favorite things to do is in the car, because a lot of the show is just going to be Mark and Amy just talking, because it's a driving show, you know, it's a road trip. And one of his favoriteest things he loves to do is tell her a horrible story from her childhood so she'll shut up. So we're just going to have that happen a bunch of times.
From his childhood, you mean, or her childhood?
No, from his childhood.
Okay, gotcha.
Like, she'll be talking about, like, ice cream or whatever, and he'll tell her a story about the time that he and his mother went out for ice cream, and you know, she realized she didn't have enough money for the ice cream, and so she robbed the store and ended up shooting the clerk, you know. And that'll be the end of the story, and Amy will just be like, oh, okay. And she'll just be silent.
Yeah. Is this, like, meant to be somewhat comedic? Like really dark humor, or not?
I think that the relationship that Amy and Mark have is somewhat comedic. It's light. There's levity to it, but both of them do understand the horrible situation that they're both in. Because Mark will realize after he's done it that him helping this little girl isn't just going to, like, ruin his relationship with that bookie. You know, this is quite possibly the worst decision he's ever made in his whole life. Not morally, obviously, but, like, for him, you know, the one good thing he's ever done will lead to nothing but pain for him. And that's kind of one of the themes throughout the show. And it's going to be something that's repeated over and over by the police detective who is in charge of finding this little girl. And that detective, I didn't even name him because he's not that important. Let's just call him Detective Hansen. Detective Hansen will, like, you know, realize that this guy, Mark Becker, he's a, you know, a lifelong criminal, lifelong scumbag, and this is the one decent thing he's ever done his entire life. And it's coming to bite him in the ass really hard. Maybe that could be a title for the show also. One decent thing.
Bite him in the ass really hard? That's not a great title.
Oh.
You'd have to shorten that. Bite me in the ass.
Bite me in the ass?
Ass in the title is also not great for the YouTube thumbnail. So
no, it is not.
I'm gonna need something.
I said one decent thing. I think one decent thing could be a good title.
That's decent.
Yeah.
That is one decent title.
Oh, look at that. And so the whole show that I have, you know, laid out. Well, no, sorry. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. I should go through what happens for the rest of the pilot. So, yeah. Mark saves Amy, and as they escape, he steals a car and a few $1,000s. Amy is scared of this strange man, but understands that the danger she was in before is greater than the danger that this stranger presents. So she allows him to save her, basically. And they, you know, drive in silence in this old, shitty, beat-up pickup truck through this tiny, you know, I'm not going to say it's a small town. It's kind of like a moderately sized city, right? Imagine Cincinnati, Ohio size, like not a huge city, but not small. They drive to just the outskirts of this town, right? To like the No-Tell Motel, basically. This slummy, shitty motel, you know, place. And all the scum of the earth live there. And a lot of the scum that live there know Mark. That's going to be one of the reoccurring things, is no matter where they go, no matter what city or state they're in, if they go and hang out with seedy criminals, the seedy criminals will recognize Mark. You know, and maybe that's in reference to one of the more fantastical elements of this show. That is to say, the strange criminal underworld that they all live under. Or inside of.
If you want a nickname for Mark, by the way, you could call him Bex.
I was
Becker.
You did say that, and I'm like, that is good, Bex. I'm writing it down. There we go, Bex. They find a motel after driving in silence for like probably 2-3 hours. They finally find a motel and they stop moving for the night. They go, you know, Mark, he's very stern and you know, stoic when he's talking to her, partially because he doesn't know how to interact with children, and partially because he's just kind of doing the calculations of what he's gonna do now that he's made this decision to help this little girl. And so they, you know, get a twin room, two beds, and they go to sleep. You know, Mark's like, go to sleep. He doesn't even ask her name. He doesn't know her name yet. And he just, like, he rolls over, and we kind of get the shot of him closing his eyes, and the camera goes dark. And then the camera lights up again in the middle of the night. Mark's eyes open, and you can just hear this soft, like, wailing of Amy in the background. And Mark just kind of, like, he looks over, and he doesn't look over at her. He just like opens his eyes, and we could see in his eyes that he's like he's feeling for this girl, even if he's being a little bit of a dick. And just as, you know, he decides like, maybe I need to talk to her or something, it starts to roll over. The door to the motel gets busted into, and like 3 or 4 armed guards come in. And they just like, they've got a gun in Mark's face. They're like grabbing Amy and yanking her away as she's crying and like screaming and pulling all the bed sheets and stuff up with her. And Mark pulls a gun out from under his pillow, shoots one of them, and gets into a scuffle with the other 3, right? And I'm imagining, because there's going to be some fight scenes and some combat in the show, simply, you know, by the nature of it. And I am imagining that nobody is trained. That's going to be one of the kind of the themes of the choreography, is that nobody has any sort of martial arts training. Nobody's a boxer. Nobody knows how to do a judo throw, right? Nobody's Batman. Everybody's just picking up lamps scrappy. And they're picking up pillows and like shoes and hitting each other in the face and throwing each other through windows and all sorts of really like gritty, you know, kind of fun combat, right? Like imagine... what's that movie? Mad Max Fury Road. That would be kind of the inspiration I would go for. So Max is like knocking these guys out, right? Maybe he stabbed one of them in the face with the pen, the little bedside table pen that they have. He grabbed the Bible out of the drawer, or one of the guys opens the drawer, reaches for the Bible. Mark kicks the drawer closed and like breaks all of his fingers in the drawer, you know, throws him over, grabs a gun, blam, blam, and the 4th final guy, you know, gets up and he's got a gun on Mark. And just as it looks like he's gonna shoot Mark in the face because the other 2 guys have got him pinned to the ground, Amy shoots the man and kills him immediately. And everybody's really like surprised, especially Amy, because she's still got the tears streaming down her face and she doesn't know, her hands are shaking as she's standing in the corner with this handgun that's way too big for her, pointed at this corpse. And in the confusion, Mark is able to you know, subdue and yeah, I'm not gonna say he murders those 2 men that were holding him down, but he definitely knocks them out. Maybe he kills one of them and like hits the other one in the face, knocks him out. He grabs Amy's hand as she's like still shaking from holding the gun. He pulls the gun out of her hand. They run, they jump back into the car, and they just start driving. And Amy, you know, she's got her hands in her face and she's not really even able to comprehend what's going on right now. And this is kind of be one of the first things that he says to her in his genuine speaking voice. That isn't like this gruff, macho, you know, thing. He just says to her, "Thank you. You know, like, you did good back there." And she looks up at him, tears in her eyes, and she nods and looks back down. And then we move from Mark's perspective over to Amy's perspective. And like, there's just kind of like a twinge in her eye, you know, like maybe a little bit of a sound cue. And she remembers something that she saw when she was in captivity. And we can get like a flashback scene to her watching them, you know, get all of the cars prepared for their agents. And one thing that's standard issue for everybody who works with this mysterious underground criminal organization is a tracking device put into each of your car inside of the glove compartment, right? And so she, you know, without saying a word, opens her eyes, you know, peels open the glove compartment, starts taking off the like plastic bits that hold everything together, and she eventually is able to pull out a tracking device and like look at it. And Mark is like he's trying to stop her. He should be like, "What are you doing? Stop it. You know, this isn't a toy. You need to stop playing with the car like this." And then he looks at the tracking device and then he looks at her and he kind of gets like maybe this kid's not that stupid, right?
Ooh.
And so they pull into a parking garage or a parking lot in a gas station. They go up and they Mark puts the tracking device on just like a random sedan or whatever, and then they drive off into the night. And he got Amy an ice cream while he was in the gas station, and she's eating the ice cream. And it's the first time we've seen her like smile the entire episode, as they silently just drive off into the night, you know, onto new adventures. And that's the end of episode 1, right? not very dialogue heavy. There's an action sequence, there's a little bit of character development, but you know, it doesn't really get into the nitty gritty of the story, which is basically we're going to get Amy to her parents' house, right? So that's kind of the entire motivation that Mark has throughout the entire story, because he looks her up online. He sees that she's missing, right? And that she's been missing for a month, and that her parents live 3 states over in Wyoming, right? And she's like, Hart, that name is familiar. You know, we're going to have something like, he recognizes the name, but he's just like, whatever, doesn't matter. Lots of people have the same last name. And they just start driving. And that's the whole, like, show, is them trying to get to, well, not the whole show, about the first half of the show, first 5 to 7 episodes, depending on how long each season is them driving to the parents' house, right? And we're going to get into all sorts of fun, wacky situations. And I'm going to break down the, like, sort of the stuff that they will encounter throughout their journey in no particular order, right? And if you have any ideas about like a cool, weird underground criminal society, I'm all ears, right? I was thinking maybe we could work the Hitman's Department Store into this, but those two shows seem kind of like tonally at odds. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the first thing that they are gonna encounter is the sheriffs, and the sheriffs are basically this band of mercenaries that function as criminal law enforcement. So they don't enforce the laws; they enforce the laws of these like massive organized crime, groups. And so somebody fucks somebody over, the sheriffs are going to come after you. You steal from the wrong person, you cut a deal, while screwing somebody over, right? If the person who's getting screwed over has enough cheddar, has enough money, they're going to hire the sheriffs, who are, and I'm imagining basically just like modern day cowboys, right? They've all got the cowboy hats on. They've all got their t-shirts with all the like big tattoos, huge dudes. They've all got their big what they call Kevlar vests on, khaki pants. Imagine Texas Rangers in your day-to-day life. That's kind of what these guys are looking like. And a lot of them will have been ex-military or ex-police. And they have turned to this life of crime simply because it pays the bills better than working for the government ever did. Yeah. And so that's going to be one of our first, bad guys, for lack of a better term, is the sheriffs, who are, like, imagine the John Wick style, like, assassination system, but you actually have to, like, qualify. It's not just, like, anybody with a cell phone gets to be a John Wick assassin. You actually have to, like, have someone vouch for you or something like that. You have to join the club. Another idea I had for the show was, like, there's a series of, what are they called? Apartment buildings. I couldn't remember the word apartment buildings. Series of apartment buildings all over the country that are all owned by this one extraordinarily old company. And it is revealed that these apartment buildings are all subsidized by the government and serve as basically small criminal cities. That's where all of the real, like, nasty dealings go down. That's where all of the drug running is based out of. And there's also, like, each one of these buildings, because this company is so old, has fallout shelters built into them. And so there's just massive underground complexes that are just filled with criminals and crime and all of that seedy sort of stuff. There's brothels, there's weapon shops, there's armorers, there's medical services, but I do think that in a movie like John Wick or Hotel Artemis, have you ever seen that movie? Hotel Artemis?
I've heard of it, but I have not seen it. I've seen the trailer.
It's got Jodie Foster in it. And as far as like a cool little action movie goes, it's not bad. But I think that, and it's basically like this hotel is for criminals to use. So, it's, all seedy and stuff, and Jodie Foster's a medic. It's pretty good. But one of the problems I have with all of that stuff is that everything seems too nice, Obviously, you have your highest-end criminals, right? You're like El Chapos and shit, and they're gonna have, like, extraordinarily nice stuff. But, like, your low-level gangsters and stuff, they don't have access to, like, the cutting-edge medical equipment and the best weapons, and all the suits are made out of Kevlar and stuff, That always... I understand why it works in a movie like John Wick. That's a little bit more unrealistic and a little bit more silly. But in this show, I think we're kind of trying to find a balance between the John Wick universe style and real life, where criminals live a lot of the time on just the most basic bare bones stuff. And so, in these massive criminal cities, there's going to be lots of poverty and lots of like drug use in the stairwells. And the medical professionals are all going to be using like out-of-date equipment, and like a lot of them are like vegetarians. Yeah, a lot of them are vegetarians. I didn't mean to say veterinarians. I meant to say vegetarians. And so it's all a little bit more seedy and a little bit grosser. But we're also going to, in these like kinds of places is where we're going to see Mark Becker shine. We're gonna see Bex like really make it into his own as a guy, because in the regular world he does not do well, right? He can't read very well, he can't write very well, he doesn't know much about history, but in this sort of area of life, he is one of the guys, right? He knows everybody, he knows how to do most things, he can crack just about any lock you put in front of him. He knows everything about drugs. He doesn't know anything about chemistry, but he knows everything about drugs, right? And so we're going to kind of see him shine in a sort of criminal setting. And all of these skills are not applicable anywhere else. Like, this guy has been built for this lifestyle, and him doing this one nice deed, this one decent thing, is truly out of character and very strange. And I think you're right to have like the background scene of him, like he had the opportunity to save a girl right when he was a young man and he didn't take it, and maybe we can see like a news story in the same flashback that like a few months later she was found, strung up somewhere, like some truly horrific shit happened to her and he could have prevented it, but he didn't. I think that would be a good, like, motivating background factor to his, character growth as a person, right? But all this stuff is to say they're driving across the country, they're driving these 3 states, and they finally get to Amy's parents' house. And Amy has become a little bit more like Mark. She's got a bit more of an edge to her. She's kind of like calling people out and making fun of things. Maybe she learns how to hotwire a car from him. That could be a nice scene of like, we need to ditch this car. They know, or like the sheriffs, just ambushed us outside of a diner. We blasted through a few of them and we stole their car, but they know what we're driving. We need to get a new car, and Mark shows Amy how to hotwire a car, and then they drive off into the sunset. But we're gonna have them arrive to we're gonna have him arrive at Amy's parents, and she's so excited and she's so happy. And Mark, right, he's relieved, but he's also a little sad to see her go, because he's gotten to really like this little girl, right? Like she's a little bit more of a friend than anything else now. And so he's a little choked up, but he doesn't let her see that, of course. And he says, all right, kid, hop out. You get in you go home, And she goes in, she walks up to the door, she takes one last look at him, and she smiles and she waves. And then she walks back into the house, right? And as she walks in, Mark, he lights a cigarette, rolls down his window, and he starts to drive away, trying to figure out what he's going to do, now that he's accomplished this one goal. And just as he's about to turn off the street, or no, it would be better if he turns off the street, we hold on his car as it turns away, and maybe a second passes, and this ear-shattering, glass-breaking scream comes from the house, And just as that happens, maybe a second passes, he pulls back up and he's just driving on people's lawns and running over plastic flamingos and shit just to get back to the house. And he busts in, he's got a handgun ready, he's still smoking his cigarette. And two of the sheriffs are holding Amy at gunpoint, right? One has a gun to her head, the other's holding a gun up at Mark and her parents. We don't see their bodies, but we see their arm or a leg, sticking out from behind a wall and just a pool of blood, from that area. And Mark is just his eyes widen and he's just so horrified, and he looks over at Amy and she's ugly crying at this point. She's got tears running down her face, she's got snot coming out of her nose, right? She's inconsolable, and the sheriff that's got her at gunpoint is trying to get a handle on her, but she's just kicking and screaming and all that stuff. And the other sheriff looks over at him for a second, looking away from Mark, and says, hey, the boss needs her alive, that, get her under control. And in that moment, Mark grabs the gun, knocks the first sheriff out, and Amy bites the second sheriff that's holding her, right on the hand. He's like, you little bitch. He drops her, and as he does, Mark shoots her in the face. Shoots her in the face. He shoots the little girl right in the face. That's our main character. No, he shoots the sheriff right in the face, and Mark grabs her and picks her up and holds her and walks back to the car, and they get in the car and they just start driving again in silence. He's got a blanket over her, but there's not a whole lot he can do. This little girl just saw her parents' dead bodies laying in front of her and had a gun held in her face, so he just keeps driving and driving, and they eventually get to a motel, and he stops and he says to her, I'm so sorry, but is there anyone else? Do you have any aunts or uncles or anything like that? And she's like, I got an uncle in California, right? And they're in the Midwest. That's a fucking drive. And he says, okay, what's his name? And she says his name is Stephen Hart. And Mark's eyes widen as he turns on the TV, and Hart Industries is currently the highest stock in the country, right? This is a Silicon Valley genius, somebody who's invented something similar to the iPhone or something like that. And Mark, everything falls into place. The whole question of why has this little girl been kidnapped? Why are these people after us? All this stuff, it just falls into place because they're going to use this little girl to as blackmail for one of the most powerful businessmen in the country, right? This guy's basically, imagine Elon Musk if Elon Musk weren't a bad person, right? Mm-hmm. And so Mark is just kind of he's taken aback, and he starts to kind of lose it a little bit because he realizes how big this all is, how ridiculously huge all of this is, and he decides that he can't put up with this, he can't handle this, he can't get this girl across the country, right? And so he just does the only thing he really knows how to do, and so he calls the cops, and he says, listen, Amy, I'm sorry, but I can't do this by myself. I'm gonna give you this phone, the cops are gonna be here in 5 minutes, and they're gonna take good care of you, right? And so Mark, he gets in his car and he parks on the other side of the street just to see if the cops show up, right, and all that stuff. And the cops show up and they pick Amy up, but Mark notices something about one of their tattoos, right? He looks and he tries to remember, and he realizes that one of her the guy, you know, who picked her up had the same tattoo as the one goon that he left alive in the first motel they stayed in. And he realizes that the cops are, you know, they're bad guys. They're coming to get her. And so, you know, obviously he has to stage this, like, multi-layered escape from the police station. So he gets himself arrested, right, to see where she is. And he sees her, and she sees him, and she's kind of like, what's going on? And he says, wait, you know, all with the eyes, obviously. Just wait, you know, well, I'll explain everything later. He picks the lock on his handcuffs, knocks out one cop, pulls a gun on another cop, grabs a little girl, you know. The cop, you know, he turns off the camera, and he just starts mocking him because he's like, no matter where you go, no matter what you do, we're going to find you, Mark Becker, right? You're going to be dead. Doesn't matter if you get this little girl to her cousin or to her uncle, you're gonna die no matter what. And he just starts laughing in his face. And Mark, like, kind of scared, and he's angry, and he doesn't know what to do, and he just blows this guy's brains out in front of Amy. And Amy's just like, you know, she's got the 1,000-eye stare, right? 1,000 yard? Is it 1,000-yard stare or 1,000? Yeah, is it yard? All right, 1,000-yard stare, and she's kind of like, what?
1,000-kilometer stare.
Yeah, I was gonna say 1,000-mile stare, and I'm like, that's a really long stare, dude. That's like 2 steps. 1 stare equals 2 steps. There you go. And so he grabs her, and they get in the car, and they just start driving, you know. And Mark is like, he's amped, right? He just killed a guy. He just found out that he's basically a walking dead man, you know. He no matter what he does, really, he's going to be murdered for this good deed. He's basically dead already, so why not see it to the end, right? And Amy's she's, for the first time in the show, we're really going to have her be afraid of him, you know? Because sure, she's seen him kill people before, but it was never like that. It was never like angrily shooting an unarmed man in the face, right? That's different entirely. And so we're going to have more, you know, more adventures, more hijinks ensue as they drive across the country. And one of the big, like, sort of things that we're going to do is that there is a full criminal city in the desert of Nevada, right? In this massive underground bunker. There is a city probably the size of Baltimore, just buried underneath the desert, and Mark's gonna kind of give Amy a bit of a history lesson on this city and how it was concocted that during the 1950s they built these huge underground bomb shelters, and the criminal element made this deal with the U.S. government, right, that in order to, you know, keep the U.S. not crime free, obviously, but like keep a majority of the like worst of it from happening, the U.S. government would condone and allow this city to be built and all sorts of commerce to be had, and all of this was fine up until JFK took office, right? And so the CIA and this massive criminal like civilization society basically teamed up, and that's how they assassinated him. We got it. We had to go up there. You know, if JFK shows up in any story, you have to explain that your characters were the ones who assassinated him, right? It's one of the rules. It's one of the rules of storytelling.
No.
Yeah. It's my favorite Red Dwarf episode.
Never killed JFK.
No, in Red Dwarf, JFK shot JFK, which I think is pretty funny. And so they're traveling all across the country, and they finally get to her uncle's house, his like huge Silicon Valley mansion, and Amy and Mark have been put through the ringer, right? They look worse for wear. They're covered in scrapes and bruises, their clothes haven't been washed, their hair is all matted down, there's probably an explosion at some point because explosions are cool. And so Mark finally like delivers her, and Amy's, you know, she's asleep. She's not injured, but she's just like passed out because she's so exhausted. And her uncle, Stephen Hart, knocks him out. Like as soon as he sees him, he knocks him out, and Mark comes to in the police station. And the cop, right, who has been... He's not a main character. He's barely even a side character, but he's just kind of gonna be in every couple of episodes just to have someone explaining to the audience. Not exposition as much as just like the audience needs to experience what this is like from an outside point of view, right? Which is... This little girl went missing. She was seen in the hands of this well-known criminal who's been traveling across the country, right? And everyone else is just like, this guy's a criminal. He's a fucking lunatic. He kidnapped this girl who God knows what he did to her, right? Thank God she's home now. But our cop guy, Detective Hansen, is he's a little bit less sure of it. And after talking with Amy and talking with Mark, he realizes that Mark this is the one decent thing he's ever done in his entire life, right? And then the detective has this huge final, not huge, has this kind of final like conversation with Mark, you know, like, you're what you are and I am what I am, right? You're a criminal, a scumbag, a monster, right? And I'm a detective, I'm a hero, I stop you. Right? There's nothing we could do about that. And if one of us decides to change what we are, if we decide to do something different than what we're supposed to do, that's when the world falls into chaos. For example, these keys to your cell and handcuffs, right? They unlock all of this stuff. But if these decide to sit on this table as a paperweight while I go into the break room and get a cup of coffee, who knows what could happen then? And Mark looks up at the cop, and the cop looks down at him and looks over at the keys and back at him. And Mark just kind of, he nods and he smiles and he says, you know, thanks. The cop says, thanks for what? Thanks for getting me a cup of coffee. And that's the end as Mark escapes police custody once again, driving a cop car. Or not a car, he's just driving a car, smoking a cigarette, as you do, driving into the sunset. And, you know, maybe we can have find a little tease of, we, you know, see Mark as he's driving. Amy's tucked into bed by her godparents, her uncle and her aunt. And we can see Mark driving away down these long desert highway. And you could just see, you know, we go inside the car and then we go and fly into the passenger seat, and then under the passenger seat, through into the glove compartment, into the machinery of the car, and we just see a blinking red light of a tracking device in the car. One decent thing. That's it. That's the show. That's my show. Regretful Heroics also, if you want. I think One Decent Thing is better.
I like it. It's a good show.
Yeah, thank you.
Very nice.
I wanted to do something that was a little bit less fantastical, you know? Mm-hmm. Still fantastical elements.
Very rare for us, having a grounded show.
Very grounded, very realistic maybe isn't the right word. Just kind of like strange, but not so strange that it's insane in the membrane.
Mm-hmm.
Insane in the brain. Yeah. But that was my show. I thought it was fun. It was a good time, and I think that's my my quota for road trip shows for the rest of the year. I've already done the entire quota for the year 3 months into it, so that's good for me.
Damn.
Well, you have any ideas, any episode ideas you may have, or characters, or whatever?
You know, maybe if you finished 30 minutes ago, but no.
All right.
I think it was good. I liked it a lot.
All right.
I think you did a very good job.
Well, thanks, buddy. And thank you all for listening to the Very Reasonable Pilots podcast. I've been your host, Charles. Along with me, as always, has been my co-host, editor, producer, co-pilot, gunner, navigator, orator, and podcasting associate, Jacob Goloth. If you like what you heard here and you want to hear more, please give us a like, a follow, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog, tell your cat. And remember, we will be here next week with a brand new television series for you to imagine and enjoy. Goodbye.